First, at the outset, I want to thank Mr. Modak for inviting me to share my views on India-Africa relations. And my topic is India-Africa relations moving towards a lasting strategic relationship. Okay. And this is the first thing. It may ask that why I have generalized, and there's a tendency also to generalize Africa, because Africa consists of 55 sovereign independent countries. And actually, the thing is that Indian foreign policy is same to all 55 sovereign African countries. There is change and continuity from Pandit Nehru's Prime Ministership era to Narendra Modi's era. But the policy became more aggressive now and proactive at present. There are more Indian missions, High Commission there. At the UPA time, it was only 18. Now it is 44. In African countries, Indian High Commission is there. And Africa has become a priority area in India's foreign policy during during the present era. Yes, and but the India-Africa foreign determinants of Indian foreign policy remain the same, as we call it, South-South cooperation and cooperation among the developing countries. So I have structured my presentation like this. First, I will speak on India-Africa relation in the historical context, because if we know the historical context, it will be easier for us to comprehend the present relationship. So the India's relation with African countries date back to the prehistoric times, and mainly, but the main the picture become more relevant, more evident now at the beginning of the Christian era. The Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a sailor's guidebook, which is variously dated 60 AD to 266 AD, continues to remain a significant source of the study of the early history of East Africa and the Red Sea. So, at the Red Sea coast. So, the author, the Greek pilot, he used to live in India for some years, and at the area at the area of the Gujarat coast, that is Bharuch, and it has dated a considerable detail the account of trading voyage between the West Africa, the Arabian, and the East Indian coast. He also provided information about the nature of the commerce, trade and commerce in this area between between East Africa, Red Sea coast, and Indian coast. And the Indian sea merchants from the west coast of India, from the Gulf of Kutch, and this west coast of Africa, from the Gulf of Kutch, from this used to use the alternating monsoon winds to visit African countries because of the mild weather at that time. November to February monsoon winds, Indian traders used to go to Africa, and during April to September, they used to come back, used to return. Sailors follow the same timing now. So they used to they use dhow boats. This is the dhow boats. This is a very thin boats, and they travel a long way from India, Oman, all the way to the eastern coast of Africa and back using alternate monsoon winds. These thin dhow boats, they used to carry heavy items like dates, water, the ivory, textile, fruits, and with only wind and the soul, so wind at the sail as a means of propulsion, and there is no engine, no petrol or diesel engine there. So there is lots of work has been done on these boats and the trading, how they used to go to the African countries and the trade between India and African countries. So the chief region of India which goods were exported to Africa was Ariaka, being the northwestern coast. This is Ariaka. They say that it is this old map. This is Ariaka. They used to, this is the chief region of region where the goods were exported, being the northwestern coast, and in particular the Gulf of Cambay. Gulf of Cambay is in here. This is the Gulf of Kutch, Run of Kutch, Gulf of Cambay. They used to call Gulf of Kambata there at that point of time. So these over the years, the link across the Indian Ocean have been strengthened through regular interaction between the communities and traders, especially from the west coast of Gujarat and parts of South India with Abyssinia. Abyssinia now is Ethiopia, Somalia, Mombasa, Zanzibar, even as far as south of Mozambique. So all these coasts, the communities, they used to go, people used to go there, the traders in all the eastern side of this African coast are very often visited by the Indian traders, mainly from the Gulf of Kutch, Cambay, Kambata, and the east at the western coast of India. This is this Africa, India Africa sea route that it has got a recent map there, here. Now, this sail regularly to James Coast. James Coast is the Tanzanian coast here. This is the James Coast, and they used to obtain incense, palm oil, myrrh, gold, copper, spices, ivory, rhino horn, and wild animal skins. There's a huge trading commodities there, and they sold cloth, metal, implements, foodstuffs like wheat, rice, sesame oil. They used to take it from India and used to sell there. And we used to get this account from Al-Masudi, Al-Idrisi, but Batuta, I think this is the name familiar. This is an Arab travelers. We got the traveler from them. And also there are many European scholars who have written on this India-Africa trade and commerce relationship, how it was been carried out. But those are mainly India-centric. But the main book that we get from the Radha Kabul Mukherjee in 1912, it was a fascinating book written by him, who sought to prove that there was an Indian dominance of trade and commerce in the Indian Ocean region at that point of time. Later, that Indian philologist Sriniti Kumar Chattopadhyay had made a detailed descriptions of trade connections between India and African countries. And mainly Sriniti Kumar Chattopadhyay has written on India trading connections with India and Ethiopia. Then came this Portuguese raid. It was that Vasco da Gama. It was an Indian sailor that time, Kanzi Malang, who guided him, Vasco da Gama, to Cochin from East Africa. So, when the Vasco da Gama came, the whole game of this trade and commerce have changed. So entry of Vasco da Gama, that is Portuguese entry in the Indian Ocean region, started the European dominance of trade and commerce in the region. So after Portuguese, they came the East India Company, and then the France, and they ousted that Indian and Arab traders from the Indian Ocean area, and they vitiated the atmosphere with the rivalry, and they destroyed the peaceful trading and the trading atmosphere in the region. And this European colonial rule then changed the relationship in a relationship of trading, regulating interactions and forcibly introducing class and racial hierarchies into what had been a freewheeling relationship in the earlier years. The colonialism also triggered the largest labor migration across the Indian Ocean, moving the vast population from South Asia to South Asia, from Southeast Asia, Far East, and to South Africa, to and the whole of Africa, mainly the Eastern Africa, to work as soldiers, laborers, and between 1834 and 1917 until its abolition through legislation, that is indentured labor. So demand for this indentured labor started after the abolition of slavery in 1834. Actually, this British Indian government, they used to take that they used to call the Indian police to in Africa, to their colonies, to work to replace the slaves, to work in the cash crop this field, in the plantation field, the rubber, the sugar, and also for the constructions of the road and the railways. And this, if you want to read about the indentured labor and their condition, so you please read this Hugh Tinker books, A New System of Slavery. He said that it is not that they are slaves, the indentured laborers, but the condition of service was almost like slavery. And they have the contract. They wanted to, if after these railway constructions, or their agreement in the plantation field, they can, when it is over, they could have come back. But some of them, they came back after they finished the work, but many of them, they stayed back. The thing is that there was some economists that they have written that there was a push and pull theory. This British India, that time, there was no job, there is a famine, and people were jobless. And there were in African countries, the plantation field, after the abolition of slavery, there was a more work. So there was a push from India and there is a pull from Africa. So sometimes after this agreement was over, after the indentured labor, after they finished their project, some people, they came back, but most of them, they stayed back and worked as shopkeepers. So these and their eventual settlement, and they also brought many of their friends and the relatives there over there after that. So their eventual settlement in various African countries resulted in spread of Indian diaspora. Now there are 3 million Indian diaspora in African countries. So the fourth and the fifth generation descendants of these laborers have emerged as a strategic asset of the soft power of the soft power of India to many of the African countries. They have contributed severely to the economic development in African in their host countries. So I want to share that they also preserve the cultural values of India. And I want to share with you one of my experience in South Africa when I went there in 1998, when after that dismantle of apartheid. And so one of these, I went there for the field work, and the place where I was staying, it was Indian people were forbidden at the apartheid time. They were not permitted to stay over there. In Pretoria. So one of the Gujarati family, they invited me for lunch. And you would believe, and I also didn't believe, that the thing that they have prepared the purely Gujarati, authentic Gujarati food that also we are not getting in India. But I was so surprised with South Africa because there was no connection. Our diplomatic relations was not there from 1946 because of this apartheid policy. But there was no communication. But how these people have preserved their their culture. And they said that, I asked them that you have not come to India, and how do you know? Because they say that this is the cookbook. It is our great grandmother's cookbook, and whatever it is. So I was very pleasantly surprised at that point of time. And now moving forward, So this the this forward of time, the Mahatma Gandhi's presence and political activities in South Africa laid the foundation of India-Africa relations way back in 1900. He was not Mahatma Gandhi was not a indentured labor. He arrived in Durban in South Africa in 1893 to serve as a legal counsel to a merchant called Dada Abdullah. And his journey to becoming Mahatma, to great soul, began in South Africa and saw him being a transformed from an ordinary subject of the British Empire to a charismatic leader of the largely peaceful, non-violent Indian independence movement. And Nelson Mandela, when he came to India after his release from jail after 27 years of imprisonment, and India had honored him with Bharat Ratna, and he chose, and the most amazing thing is that he chose the land of Gandhi as his first destination, whom he called his political guru or the role model. So this and his Mahatma Gandhi's role in South Africa was amazing, and in the foreign country, how he started his non-cooperation and Satyagraha movement. So, at Nelson Mandela, when he came to India in 1990, he said that very interesting thing. He said said in a program in a program that you gave us Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and we return you as Mahatma Gandhi. He had a high regards uh, for Gandhi. And this first Gandhi Satyagraha movement, 1906-7 against Asiatic registration bill during his stay in South Africa, played an influential role in the formation of African National Congress, and which is now the ruling party, and later the African freedom struggle in the apartheid era. First, he started to protest against this apartheid regime. And so everyone knows about this Gandhi, the story of Gandhi, that his trip to railway trip to Pretoria, although he had the first class ticket and he was pushed out from the compartment of this by a white person who summoned the white police and asked him to that pushed out from the this first class compartment because the coolies or these non-whites were not permitted. That was the state policy there, the policy of apartheid, non-whites, and not permitted there. So then afterwards, he started this Asiatic, his protest against this racial discrimination state policy, and it was not been easy. It was a foreign land to him, and how he organized the protest, and everybody must be doing it after when we read Gandhi, and now we have seen the excellent film by Richard Ottenberg. Then African leaders, not only South Africa, but others from Kenya, from Ghana, from Tanzania, this Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, and this Nelson Mandela, of course, and then Nyerere, they are from Tanzania. They are all inspired by Gandhi's philosophy. And India's independence allowed it to expand its leadership and influence in Africa by actively supporting anti-colonial freedom movements. In Kenya, in Uganda, and in South Africa, India has always Indian people who are settled, who are been living there, have also participated in the freedom movement, and we know about that their large contribution of this trade unions leader like Makhanlal, and then also the Katrada, Fatima Mir, Fatima Mir I met when I went to South Africa, and they were these most admirable personalities, and how they have fought against the apartheid regime. So if Gandhi laid the moral foundation of India-Africa relation it was Nehru who gave the relationship a political structure during his long tenure as Prime Minister of India between 47 and 1964. Many African leaders have stated publicly that their indebtedness to the Indian example and its systematic concern with African nationalist goal. After then together with China's Zhou Enlai, then Egypt Abdul Nasser, Yugoslavia Tito, Ghana's Nkrumah, Indonesia Sukarno, Nehru played a leading role in convening the first Africa-Asia conference in April 1955, and eventually giving the birth of non-aligned movement. Non-aligned movement. So eventually, then afterwards, this non-aligned movement, they have non-aligned movement adopted the South-South cooperation and collective self-reliance among developing countries at their basic as the economic as the basic principles. So after India's independence in 47, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru gave the relationship a political structure by incorporating robust South-South solidarity in Indian foreign policy. And India was the first country to lodge a complaint against South Africa on its policy of discrimination in UN General Assembly way back in 1946. That was the interim government period, right? It was not, India was not being independent at that time. So, sorry. Then India has introduced various programs. Although India was poor, that there was a special Commonwealth Assistance for Africa program and the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, ITEC. India offers scholarships, training to African students, civil and military officers, project assistance to empower African people. And India was also involved in UN peacekeeping mission. So there are many programs that India has undertaken during Nehru's time. Here also, I want to share with you my experience there. In 1913, I organized a conference in Nairobi with the Nairobi University and also the Military Academy of Nairobi. So, and when I was interacting with the military officers over there, and I was fairly surprised to see most of them, from the top general to the to the middle level and also the lower people, not lower people, the generals and the soldiers, they have been trained in Pune, this academy. So there was immediately familiarity, this type of familiarity of vibe has been established, and that made my to organize my conference much easier. So and then meanwhile, to promote awareness of Africa, Department of African Studies at the University of Delhi was established in 1954 with the personal initiative of Jawaharlal Nehru. So in the 1990s, it has been continued. Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi's prime ministerships. There was continuity in Africa foreign policy. You have supported that anti-colonial movement, anti-apartheid movement, and these initiatives and the general inclination for cooperation probably facilitated the consolidation of India's position as the advocate for developing countries over the years. So it helped us, the history helped us a lot. Now I will come to this, to the next point, that the changing dynamics of Indian-Africa relations, that is how these Indian-African relations have developed after 1990. Why 1990? That was in the international space, there was a dismantlement of apartheid, and also the Soviet Union has gone, and this India saw a turning point also, this India's political economic scenario. It introduced economic reforms and puts its economy on a very high path. It abandoned this model of mixed economy, no license Raj, then into networks of the globalization, they have introduced globalization through a new export-import policy, opening up the national economy, no government control over firms or markets. So at this point of time, the scope of India-Africa cooperation has increased rapidly, especially with India's emergence as a potential important player in the world economy and its own significant need for oil and other natural resources. So, so now I would like to introduce you the what are the strategic drivers. The first strategic drivers is the search for natural resources and natural resources and securing oil was a key concern for the country in the mid to 2000, leading to a deliberate efforts to build ties with oil-rich African countries and also establish and with Africa's established and emerging petrostates. The African continent holds 10% of the world's reserves, 40% of all gold, and up to 90% of thorium and platinum, and 90% also of copper, I forgot to write. The largest reserves of cobalt, diamond, and platinum, uranium in the world. Just see the gold, diamond, South Africa, huge. Then the crude oil also they have, and they're also discovering in the different places of Africa, and and the coffee grains. So it is a very, very rich continent, and so the one is the access of this to search for natural resources, and then the strategic driver. The second key driver is India's desire to access markets for goods and business opportunity in the African countries for its growing economy in the post-reform era. So we have to sell some our goods also. So we then India was trying to access market. The African continent, with its huge demographics likely to hit billion people, high growth rates, a huge agricultural potential began to emerge to be a big market, multiplying its value for India's in potential investors. So India's increasing interest at that point, at the time Manmohan Singh, our the economics prime minister was there, and so he has been revealed in the speech of the where he described Africa as a continent which possesses all the prerequisites to become a major growth pole of the world. So India becoming more and more active in their foreign policy after 1990. So other key strategic objectives of India, Africa, the renewed partnerships relates to India's concern over security in the Western Indian Ocean region, because it has been hotbed of hotbed of this this piracy, and the terrorism and the trafficking of drugs and small arms. And added to this is the growing presence of China in the Western Indian Ocean states, which is a direct challenge to the region status quo and India's sphere of influence. So in order to cope with the challenge, India has revived defense agreement with many of the African countries and seeks to emerge as a net security provider in Africa. So their whole means gradually the things are changing. India is becoming more proactive. The other contributory element is India's strategic drive is the growing importance of Africa in several multilateral institutions, and the support of African countries in the crucial for India's bid for a permanent seat in the Security Council. Although although there's 55 African countries, are always Africa vote as a bloc. So this is also in India's mind that if you want to have this even permanent seat in the Security Council, the vote of Africa is very crucial. So, and then the strategic drives are the presence of 3 million strong Indian diaspora in Africa is also an immense strategic importance to India. So this, the Indian diaspora is a distinctive feature of India-Africa relation that distinguishes from other powers involved in the continent. So they have established strong links with the political, economic, and the social fabric of the continent. These people of Indian origin also help Indian industrialists to establish their connections in Africa. For instance, South Africa, Mauritius, Kenya, Tanzania have attracted some leading Indian corporate investments, this including the Tata Group, Mahindra Group, Reliance Communication, Ranbaxy, Pharmaceutical, Cipla. So all of them, whenever they go to African countries to set up their this industry, they get help from this Indian diaspora. And Indian diaspora now, they are now very, very successful. The legendary figures of this in this Kenya, in East African countries, and also in the whole of Africa. So in Kenya, they occupy 10% of the business, and in Tanzania, the 70%. So now you know that how much importance that India has. Thus, in the post-reforms period, from an ideological primacy of the earlier years during the Nehru years, that is dam, affiliation, solidarity, then India and there's India's emergence in Africa began to factor more on pragmatic considerations in India's foreign policy discourse, focusing on issues such as business and market access, private sector investment, energy security, diaspora, and economic diplomacy. So these are the strategic drivers that I wanted to point out here. And then I will come to the strategic initiatives to get this thing to facilitate, to enhance India-Africa relations. What the strategic initiatives that India has taken? First, increase of Africa's aid and developing assistance. There are four main pillars of Indian development partnership approach to Africa: capacity building, training under Indian Technical Economic Cooperation, ITEC, India's lines of credit LOCs, India-Africa Forum Summits that have been established in 2008 there, and trade and investment. So first, if we talk about this ITEC, it is the flagship program. There are about 25,000 African students at present enrolled in 500 Indian public and private universities. So US 125 million Pan-African e-network has been created, linking 5 regional universities, 5 special hospitals, 53 regular hospitals. And they have been connected with the education across Indian Africa to Indian universities. Vidya Bharati education and Arogya Bharati for telemedicine. It has been they have it has been they have been created. Pan African network has been created. So it was been first established by the project was convened by the former President of India, Dr. APJ Abul Kalam, and was formally launched in February 26, 2009. Under the Pan-African E-Network project, India has set up a fiber optic network to provide satellite connectivity. So they have this linking with the regional universities, virtual learning, then 5 specialty hospitals. Some of the hospitals in Uganda's rural area has been directly connected with Bombay, Bombay or Kolkata, all the metro hospitals, big hospitals in India, and these 53 regular hospitals, 53 educational institutions across Africa, India that with direct link with the Indian universities, and so this is also these are all open during the COVID time. So, moreover, India's ITEC program is unique because it is also funded by the Indian NGOs such as Barefoot College, Self-Employed Women's Associations, and other who are engaging with communities in Africa to build capacity at the grassroots level. So people-to-people contact, not only the government initiative, but also the NGOs, and they have been supported by this ITEC program, government program, or also other foreign fund. So they have also have also helped African countries to build capacity at the grassroots level. Self-Employed Women Association, that is SEWA, that is the Ilavat institutions, they have the big presence in South Africa and South African informal sectors. Ghana, Nigeria, to promote rights of and the informal workers, especially women, empowerment of women. And the other is a very interesting, the Barefoot College in Tilonia, Rajasthan. So this Barefoot College, their program running since 2004 teaches empowering these trains middle-aged women from rural villages in African countries to become solar engineers. And they have given this, they are funding these middle-aged women, the nannies from the rural village, from Ethiopia, and from from all Kenya, from Sierra Leone. I visited the Barefoot College, and so it was so amazing to see these old women. They have coming all the way to become the solar engineers. So the trainees are often illiterate and illiterate grandmothers who maintain strong root in their village and play a major role in community development, bringing sustainably electricity to remote, inaccessible villages. So it was a very eye-opening for me that how this Barefoot College is working. This is the solar engineers funded by India. So this is, they know that now the technology, they go back to their respective countries and lightening the thousand of villages. That is India's, one of the India's contribution. Let's lines of credit. So aid to Africa dominated by lines of credit and provided through the Ministry of External Affairs, Exim Bank. Africa accounts 40% of the total LOC extended over the years, the highest beneficiary after Asia. So today's LOC are integral part of India's economic diplomacy. As many as 222 LOCs valued 14.7 US dollar billion, covering as many as 357 projects, has been extended to 42 African countries. I talked about the India Africa Forum Summit. So allocation of aid, I think in the African countries is one of the significant elements of IAFS. At the time of the summit, India committed billions of dollars in soft loans and aid. The vibrancy of the event is evident from the three IFS systemically organized 2018 Delhi, 2011 in Addis Ababa, and 2015 it was also in Delhi. So a fourth summit was stalled due to the onset of COVID and the COVID pandemic. So this IFS process and its outcome, the result, so much of loans and the credit lines are opening for African countries and has been strongly supported and endorsed by the Africa's leadership, and confirming the mutually beneficial content of this process. In 2015, 44 African countries participated in the conference. So it is on, and India make a point that India is not imposing the loans. It is on demand. Whatever they contact this government of Africa, and whatever the demand, whatever the project, so they are funding that. And then the strategic initiatives of trade and commerce. To enhance trade and investment, both the government and private sector through multiple agencies launch various programs. That is the Focus Africa program, TINAM initiative, India-Africa Forum Summit. So India also cancelled the US dollar 24 million worth of debt of 7 heavily dated poor countries and open Indian market to as many as 38 least developed countries on the duty-free tariff preference scheme in 2008. And you won't believe, not in Kolkata, I am not very much familiar with the big markets, but in Bombay where I'm staying, so I have seen the lots of fruits and these avocados. Those are very much, the Africa producers. So much they are, these Bombay markets are full of the fruits coming from Africa. So because the India government has given these duty-free tariff concessions for all these the African food. So besides government initiatives, since 2005, Indian private sector, India's trade and investments are led by the Indian public sector, Confederation of Indian Industry, FICCI, with the support of without support of Indian government, organized various programs to enhance trade and investment with African countries. And they organized the India-Africa Project Partnership Conclaves, then rebranded the India-Africa Growth, then Made in Africa Show they organize regularly. They have trading offices in various regions. And thanks to these above efforts, that's India's private sector companies and Exim Bank of India, India's trade with Africa has increased considerably from almost nothing, nil in early 2000 to about 78 billion US dollar in 2014, before settling to about 89.6 billion US dollar in 2020 21. So this is the graph that I have seen African destination of Indian exports. That is Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, Kenya, Tanzania, and Tanzania. So this is only, but the challenge, here is the challenge. They have Tanzania and Mauritius. Mauritius is very, very important because there's lots of Indian diaspora and it's very much near to us. And near to Mumbai, say Indian coast. So this, but only within the challenge is that within the 55 African countries, we have reached only to the 6 or 7 African countries for our Indian exports, and it has to be diversified. That is the scholars have to say. Export basket of India has been dominated by petroleum products, rice, road vehicles, pharmaceutical products are very, very important there, which I will tell you about the pharmaceutical industry, how they're operating there, which together accounted for about 38.8% of Indian exports to Africa in 2019-2020. So, in fact, the African market is precisely dependent on Indian suppliers of certain products, pharmaceutical and rice. This is especially the case of East Africa, where 35% of pharmaceutical imports come from India and 20% of rice. So this is this Indian pharmaceutical industry, especially, have also taken various steps to strengthen trade and investment ties with African countries. So such steps build a relationship of trust along with economic growth. For instance, CIPLA or Ranbaxy, they have created goodwill in 2001, since 2001, when it announced that it would supply AIDS drugs half a price from the multinational companies who are operating there. Multinational companies were selling in $10,000 to $15,000 a year this AIDS medicine, where the Indian CIPLA and they are offering much cheaper price of $350 to $600 for this AIDS medicine. So this is the way, and AIDS were being, they were there spread it in almost all the countries of African, and the poor patients were not being, they were not afford to get those AIDS because of the prices. So this created a goodwill that was immense. And you see the pharmaceutical products export is the major commodity from India. And Ghana, and during the COVID time also, Ghana became India was able to build a relationship of trust among the African countries. Ghana became the first recipient of the historic first shipment of COVID vaccine from Serum India. Coupled with this, India donated 50,000 doses of Covishield vaccines under this vaccine Maitri program. The Ghanaian minister expressed her gratitude to the government of India and particularly to the Prime Minister Modi for donation of the vaccine, which she said is not possible to procure even if one has the money. So it is a very big thing. And similar sentiments were echoed by other African countries that received the vaccines, including Algeria, Angola, Botswana, Egypt, and so on and so forth. So this is the during the COVID side, COVID time also, India was able to establish, that trust with the trust and friendship with African countries. Then I will quickly talk about this, the Indian import partners. The top import partners are Egypt, Algeria, Angola, South Africa, Nigeria, and these are all these oil states. So these look at Indian input show that it consists of strategic like mineral fuel gold. Gold India gets is from South Africa and from Ghana mainly. Coal and other minerals accounting for maximum imports from Africa. The petroleum oil is the most important commodity in India-Africa relations, and dwarfing all other trading items. It accounts for 47.8% of India's total imports from Africa, followed by precious stones and metals, mainly gold. Because India then and in this field, India has a big challenge with China. China has a significant investment in in the African oil fields, and so there are often that's a big conflict situation comes up with China with the government of China. So and then we must read out. So India traditionally buys oil from Nigeria, Angola, Algeria, Egypt, and Equatorial Guinea, with Nigeria being the leading supplier of oil from Africa. Imports of crude and this from Nigeria was 8.19 billion in 2021. It's quite high. In recent years, also India has bought oil from Cameroon, Chad, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Ivory Coast. So in reality, therefore, that it is a win-win potential for India's oil trading with African countries. For India, it helps a lot, not only meeting immediate oil demand, but also in diversifying of source of oil imports. We know that India imports oil mainly from the Middle East, but because of the dicey situation there, India always have opened up to the other options. And so this for Africa, it is also a win-win situation because oil trades offer opportunity to come out from Eurocentric domination of trade. So India has so much of trade by China, but if we see the overall, so Indian this African trade is mostly goes to the European and the earlier former colonial countries. So this so Indian investment, if you can see that it is always runs parallel with the trade with the continent, with an overlap between top investment destination and top trading destination in the continent. Indian business interest investment were largely driven by small and medium enterprises and traders. But now in recent times, these oil ONGC, Tata Group, Vedanta Group, Reliance Industry, these you name the industry and you will find their presence in African countries. But these groups, they're investing in the existing acquiring in business or to make brownfield investments which readily employ locals and procure supplies locally. And it is very easier for them. And for example, that the Bharat Airtel, which acquired Jain Telecommunication 2010 for 10.7 billion and invested 125 billion in Gabon, one of the African countries, and in conjunction provided ICT trading and all of these industries. They are having they're the very active CSR program, corporate social responsibility program there, and these programs have been much useful. So this thing region-wise investment, if you see the graph, whole of the 63% in the eastern coast. Then the west mainly they get this the oil, south, north 22%, and middle Africa that is only 1%. So Indian multinational companies has been very active in the very active in strategic sectors. So, and this is ICT ICT, including hydrocarbon, agribusiness, pharmaceuticals, ICT, communication infrastructure, petroleum, refining. They bring petroleum, they refine it, and then also it is sent manufacturing. Goods are also at petroleum refined. After refining, they're sent back to African countries or it's sent back to the other European countries too. So India is the largest foreign leaser of Ethiopian farmland. In the agribusiness, India is very active, and that is also some controversy on that, on the land grab, because they said it is a land grab. But all the European and even the China, they are also in these, they take lease from these African government, and they produce the cash crops. And in Ethiopian farmland, there was a controversy with one of our industrialists, that is Karaturi. He used to produce the cut flowers, and which used to export in this many all these European countries. So there was a controversy against him for the land grab and but afterwards it has been figured out. But I also worked on this Indian private investment in agriculture in Zambia, but I didn't find that time that so much of land grab or any protest against India's industrialist. In some countries was there, yes. Then Indian conglomerates like Tata's, Kirloskars, pharmaceutical firm like Cipla, they also make undertaken profitable projects in many of the African countries. So in the energy sectors, overseas OVL have been active public sector companies. Reliance have also invested in equity oil in Sudan, SR also in Madagascar, Nigeria. So Indian firms are relatively successful in the mining sector. One of the success stories, Vedanta Resources, that is Agarwal, which is the owner, which turned around Zambia's copper mining industry. The company acquired Kankula copper mines in 2004 and went into making the fifth largest producer of refined copper in the world. So likewise, Indian multinational Tata Motors, Mahindra, the automobile sector, they have made a huge investments and their presence, and they have expanded their presence. Indian firms are more successful in positioning themselves in agriculture, textile sectors. Indian companies also have first move advantage in the African ICT sector, whose growth is expected to triple in 2020. In 2025, and then I will touch the last point, that is security. So in security has been included as a strategic driver or strategic initiative that we have taken in these countries in this present era, in the Narendra Modi era especially. So because of the little countries, island states, Western Indian Ocean region are emerging at the center of our attention for Indian analysts and policymakers. Why? Because of this, because it is a very important trade route, but also concerned because of the interconnected security threat that I've already told you about, the piracy, terrorism, and trafficking, drug trafficking, and weapons. But the most important thing for why we have taken this initiative in security, we are making agreements with many of these Western Indian Ocean countries like Mauritius, the Seychelles, Djibouti, because of the strong presence of naval presence of China in the Western Indian Ocean state, which directly challenge regional status quo and India's sphere of influence. And so India has developed or revived several forms of bilateral and multilateral cooperation with Indian Ocean coastal states and beyond. In addition, India is one of the largest contributors of troops of even peacekeeping mission in Africa. It has participated in nearly all missions in Africa and sent observers and contingents to several African countries, undertaking robust operations to enforce peace in civil war-like situations. And so it is a huge contribution, and there are many casualties, and many works have been written on Indian peacekeeping force. I have one student who was a helicopter pilot who did very significant work on his PhD work on human peacekeeping mission in Africa. So in sum, this paper throws light on the fact that Africa is no more a continent on the margins of India's security interest, but very much a focus area in its long-term strategic plan. India-Africa independence has created this strategic relationship grounded on a complex international situation. Thank you.